Hello, friends and fellow writers. How are you? This is Carter, and welcome to this episode of Making It Up. As I'm recording, I have just come back from Thriller Fest, which was fantastic. A little bit overwhelming as always. I was there for 4 or 5 days. I'm the co-chair of the debut committee for ITW. So doing a lot of work with the 30 plus debut authors who were debuting there, the debut class, I should say. And so it's myself, Bob Dugoni, and Elena Hartwell who kind of work with them. And that was very satisfying. Lots of cocktail parties, lots of panels, all that good stuff. And of course I came home sick. A couple of days later, I'm just like, oh, I feel like shit. But that's what happens when you're at these things. But I haven't been sick in a couple of years, so it's kind of annoying. Fortunately, I made it through today's podcast and hopefully through this intro without hacking up a lung or sniffling or blowing in my nose. Before we get to today's guest, I just want to note that we have just launched and by the time this episode airs, it will have been a little bit old news, but now there are 3 more classes from Unbound Writer Online. It's the How I Write series, where it's deep one-on-one interviews with authors about their process, how they do the things that they do. So you can check all of that out at unboundwriter.com, and you can also certainly see my offerings in terms of writing retreats, seminars, and one-on-one coaching. All right, so let's get to it. Let's get to today's guest. Today, I had the pleasure of talking to Bryan Gruley. Bryan is the author of 6 different novels. His most recent book that just came out is called Bitterfrost. It's a thriller from Severn House, the first book in a series. He is a dark writer, which I adore. I will read anything that's dark and devastating. And I think that's kind of a little bit of what he's known for. He's an Edgar nominee and a Pulitzer Prize winner when he worked with the Washington Post. So Bryan spent many years in the newspaper or in journalism industry, and we talked a lot about that. I've talked to a lot of writers on this podcast who are either currently journalists or have been journalists, and just about how that has influenced their ability to write, particularly when we start thinking about thrillers and suspense novels, kind of cutting out all the fluff. Obviously when you're writing for a newspaper, and certainly back in the day when you were writing for a printed newspaper, brevity was important. Column inches were valuable real estate, so you had to get to the point quickly. And I think a good story of suspense, of course you want to let it breathe a little bit, does kind of incorporate a lot of those mechanisms where you're giving the reader enough credit for them to fill in a lot of the blanks in terms of the descriptions and things like that, and you are creating this propulsive story through through brevity and through an economy of words. So, and through short chapters as well. So we kind of went into detail on that. And at the end, we made up a drowning kid's story. So I hope you're in the mood for that, based on a sentence from Karen Slaughter's recent book, This Is Why We Lied. So this is a good one. Bryan's got a lot of experience, a lot of good advice in this. You can listen to his journey about the rejections and the successes that he's had. So it's a very common writer's story that not everything was smooth along the path and what he learned from it. So you're going to like this one. This is my conversation with Bryan Gruley. I know.
I have a bunch of T-shirts. There are other ones my wife got me, and they're semi-disparaging blurbs from reviews. Like Random Suspenseless Trash was my first one. Some just really bad review of Starvation Lake that was on Amazon. Somebody who had a lot of time on their hands.
That's fantastic.
Oh, they're cool shirts.
It's funny. Like, I used to do a lot of swag stuff, and then I guess as the books go by, I forget about it. I just forget to do anything. Yeah. And then I just feel like when you order stuff, I barely give it away. So I have all these luggage tags from Dead Girl in 2A. I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do with all of these now? So it's hard to figure. What I like to do is like work like exactly like the shirt you have. If I create something, like it might be a fictitious coffee shop, I will create the logo. I will have it totally down because I love that stuff. And then I'll print one T-shirt just for me, and
Yeah.
nobody will understand what it means, and it just amuses me.
Well, one of my publicity people that I hired, she went to this website called Bonfire, and she
Hmm.
designed hats, t-shirts. The thing is with Bonfire is it's all made only when you order it. So I order this shirt and then they make it. So you don't have to
Right.
like order 25 shirts. And you don't have to worry. And if other people want to buy it, they can go in there and I actually end up making $2 or so,
Right.
or
Right.
the
Exactly.
equivalent of my monthly royalties. Yeah. So,
Right. Oh, well, we can get into that too. But
okay.
just backing up a little. So where do you live now and where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Detroit area, Redford,
Okay. Yeah.
just on the western border of Detroit. And we live in Traverse City, Michigan now.
Hmm. My,
So
my daughter just graduated from Michigan State.
awesome. So, this is Michigan and
Right.
Traverse is here. It's a
Right.
beautiful place. We've only been there a year. Before that, Florida. Before that, Chicago. Before that, Washington, D.C. Before that, Detroit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It
it's,
sounds a little bit like my history, just bouncing around all over the
yeah,
place.
it's been, it's been fun.
Yeah. And growing up, were you a creative kid?
Well, when I guess I was seven, second grade, or thereabouts. I had a friend named Kurt Flanagan lived down the next block, and we were playing football or something one day, and he started talking up this book he read, The Crisscross Shadow,
Hmm.
which I think was number 13 in the Hardy Boys
Hmm.
series. So my mother got it for me, and then I read a bunch of other Hardy Boys books. And then I invented my own version of the Hardy Boys, the Anderson twins. And I would write these stories out longhand. And I even drew the little pencil drawings that they had in the Hardy Boys books of
I love
Frank
it.
and Joe.
Yeah.
And then I'd read them to my second grade class at St. Gemma Elementary. And so that's really where I started writing and liking it. And my mother, if she was here now, Carter, she'd say, "You really just like to be the center of attention." And I
That's
wouldn't
part of
argue with
it.
her.
That's part of it.
It'd be hard to argue with her. But and my classmates, I don't know if they liked the stories, but they didn't mind a break from math and science and religion and all that stuff. So that's where I got going.
Yeah, two things that come to mind. First of all, I can't imagine in today's world the idea of an elementary school boy talking up a book to another elementary school boy. That seems
Yeah,
almost like unfathomable. So
yeah,
it's like you kind of think about like, were it not for the age we are and the idea that books were some of the only things we had growing up,
yeah,
who knows where we would have
yeah.
ended up.
Kurt, I remember Kurt going on about the bad guy in that book, and his name was Breck, the bad guy.
Wow, you really
And
remember a lot of this.
yeah, and well, in my third book, The Skeleton Box, I named a bad guy Breck.
Oh, of course.
And then Kurt, whom I had not seen in 50 years, showed up at one of my book events. It was so awesome to see him.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
bizarre.
yeah, yeah.
The other comment you
Small
made
world.
that kind of hit me was the idea of being the center of attention, which seems on surface level incongruent with the idea of being a writer, because most writers, I mean, just to very broadly stereotype, are introverts. They hate self promotion, stuff like that. But the reality of it is, like, we do want our stuff to be out there. We want the attention. We want to be read, for better or for worse, whatever you think about the book. And it's hard sometimes because you're sticking your neck out there, and to evidence with the bad Amazon review, you don't know how it's going to be received. So you kind of think
No,
like, do I really want this? But I think we do have a deep-seated desire to be liked in a way, don't you think?
conceit. Well,
Yeah,
when I
yeah.
was when I was just out of college, about a year out, and I had my first newspaper job at a little paper outside of Detroit. I was at a party in Chicago with a Notre Dame classmate. His name is OD, and OD said to me, "Writers have to be conceited." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you think you have something to say." And at the moment, at that time, I thought, "No, I'm just covering the Howell School Board. I don't have anything to say."
Right.
But now, OD's read all my books, and he's actually been editing the one I'm writing now, and he's doing a great job. So,
Hmm.
um, but I think he's essentially right. Conceit is kind of a tough word, but
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. There is, so it's that balance between that need to show people that we have something worth writing, and then also getting the feedback as we kind of launch our publication journey of like, no, you're not there yet. You don't have anything worth sharing because you're getting
Yeah,
all these rejections. So it's
yeah,
I
been
remember
there.
I when I started writing, which was kind of out of the blue, and I had no background or experience or education in it. I had such a lack of confidence that I think it actually served me for a while because it helps with the rejections because you get these rejections like, well, of course you're rejecting me because I don't know what I'm doing. And as you grow and as you get better, it gets harder to take on those rejections. But I think
Yeah,
early on, just being kind of ignorant as long
yeah.
as you're vulnerable and open to learning, I think it's helpful to have kind of a lack of confidence.
Well, I've saved all my rejections that
Oh, me too.
my my,
Yeah.
my agent sent me, but I also have the printed rejections I got from newspapers that I was trying to work at, and my favorite
Oh,
was from the Detroit Free Press. What did that guy say? That I didn't have the skills needed to reach the level of a free press reporter. So then, a few months later, I took a job at the Detroit News, which was 3 blocks at that time, 3 blocks down the street. And those two papers were in the nastiest newspaper, the last great newspaper war.
hmm.
Um, and man, did I love kicking their ass.
Yeah, there's nothing more motivating than rejection for
Yeah.
sure. So you did your love of writing, obviously, which started at a very early age, culminate in you becoming a journalism major? Is that what you studied?
There is no journalism major at Notre
Oh,
Dame.
okay.
Um,
Okay.
but I was writing all the time, and I think as it happens, I just recently read the essay I wrote as part of my application because
Hmm.
I was going through some files and there it was. So I read it.
That's got to be hard
And
to go back and see stuff like that.
yeah, it was, it wasn't bad. Yeah, I would never get in there today, but with my marks and GPA and all that stuff. But I said in there that I thought someday I'd be a writer. I didn't know exactly what kind. And when I got into Notre Dame, I was an English major and an American Studies major. And I thought, well, I'll just be a lawyer. My
Hmm.
parents will be happy. I've got a big shot son. He's a lawyer. And then about end of junior year, Carter, I said, I don't want to go to fucking school anymore. This
Yeah.
sucks. I
Yeah.
hated it. And so then I started to get serious about finding something in the newspaper business. I mean, I dreamt all along of writing novels, but I certainly didn't have the skill. But even worse, what was I going to write about?
Right.
Chasing girls at bars,
Right.
shooting pool. I had nothing to
Right.
say. So, the newspaper, and I started at the Brighton Argus. You, the people you cover give you things to say. So you
Right.
just try to render it accurately.
I mean, that's an interesting comment, one that we haven't really talked about much on this podcast, because a lot of people like me and like yourself maybe started writing novels at least a little bit later, not as 21-year-olds, right? So,
Right.
but you almost wonder like how much of that is just like you haven't developed the skill set to do that, which you can, even if you start writing at 33, like I did, I had zero skill set. So you learn that skill set no matter where you are. But how much of it is like I've got nothing to say because I haven't lived enough years on this
Right.
planet to have the context for kind of deep emotional storytelling.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. It seems like the older you get, the better stories you have to tell, perhaps.
Well, it was for me, and hindsight is 2020, but being a journalist, um, there are many transferable skills, observation,
Totally.
detail, economy of words. And you could see, even though I wasn't really thinking it at the time, that I wanted to write narratives, stories that had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And increasingly, I was doing that first at the Detroit News, and then I went to the Wall Street Journal, and I had a couple of bosses there who pushed me into writing long-form narratives. And I think that's where, you start to learn the skills of keeping the reader in the room, right?
Right.
How do you write? You write a first paragraph that makes them read the second paragraph, that makes them read the third paragraph. As Elmore Leonard said, try to skip stuff other people tend to skip, boring, get that out of there. And, and you're doing it, hundreds, thousands of times in that industry. And you're surrounded by people, some of whom are really, really, especially at the Journal. There's so many good writers there that I was around, and you learn by not just working with them, but osmosis, having a beer with them.
Totally. I've talked to a lot of writers who came from a journalistic background, and I think it especially translates to the type of writing that we do, thriller, suspense, where that economy of words, I think, is more critical in our genre than almost most, because you do have to pull them in. You do have to give the reader credit for their imagination by not describing everything. They'll get it. And you have to be propulsive. And I think journalism with the economy of words really kind of hooks you on that. It's funny today to see like the media landscape. Obviously, everything's almost all online, and you see long form blogs that go 8,000 words. And to me, that's like, I'm interested in the subject matter, and then I start reading. I'm like, get to the point.
That's asking a lot.
Yeah, it is. It's got to be right. Even with blogs, you tend to follow writers that you recognize. Like, I'll read anything this so and so puts out because I have an hour that I can dig into this. But for me, I'm just like, pull me in, make me breathless right away. And I think journalism, people come from a journalism background tend to they've honed those skills down pretty well.
I wrote this story once. I'll just tell you the lead. So it was set, the dateline was Manistee, Michigan. David Gutowski, a self-employed painter here, killed a 158-pound buck with his bare hands and a brown leather belt.
See, I would jump right into that.
Who is not going to read at least the second paragraph, right?
Right. 100%.
Yeah. Man, that was great. A fun story.
When did you make the leap to writing your first novel?
So this would have been the late 90s. So I was in my early 40s. I remember reading, I read Mystic River. In fact, I was here on the Cape, as it happens. I was on a beach. Oh. I didn't read it all.
A very dark and depressing.
Yeah, but I loved it.
Yeah,
and I'm not comparing myself to Dennis Lehane in any way, but I thought, I love this and I can do this.
Yeah.
I can write like this or something like it. And so I went to my agent at the time and I told her, I had done a nonfiction book, so I had an agent. And she said, go, all right, take a shot. So I wrote 25,000 words and I was on the phone with her. She's a big shot now, Suzanne Gluck. And she said, well, not this. This doesn't work for me. Why don't you write me a story about these middle-aged guys who play hockey in the middle of the night? Which, that's me, right? Mm-hmm. And I immediately had an idea, which I'm not going to tell you and your viewers because it would spoil things. But, so this was 2001. It was right before September 11th. So I didn't get started till the following year. And it was finally published in 2009, Starvation Lake. And it took me 4 years to write it because even though I had all, some skills, I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Right.
And
how do you develop a sense of pace? How do you develop a character arc? How
Right.
do you have a satisfying? It's just by writing over and over and over for
Yeah.
4 years that you get
Again, I wrote a whole
broad sense.
draft.
Of
Wrote a whole
course,
draft, and then I thought, oh shit, I should do this. It was the biggest twist in the whole book, so I had to go back. I
and
rewrote it.
layer everything in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 4 or 5 times, and I got 26 rejections, and I'd kind of given up. And I thought, I'm going to write another book, though. I have an idea how to do this now. And then um, Touchstone, Simon and Schuster came and gave me a 3-book deal, and I was like, "Oh, this is awesome." And then I
Huh.
thought, "Oh shit, I have to write the other 2 books."
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah,
I mean, that's 26 rejections from publishers. That's a lot, especially in the 90s. That's almost all of them. So I'm surprised that there was anyone left to talk
yeah.
to.
I
And
have to tell you about one of
yeah.
my favorite rejection of all time. So this editor, she's very successful, and she said, "To me, this novel falls between stools. It's too nuanced to be a mystery, but it's not quite literary fiction." And
Hmm.
I'm like, too nuanced. That's a bad thing. Okay. So whatever. I forgot about it. And after the year after I got the contract, I met this woman at a party,
Hmm.
a friend's book party. And I was needling her. I didn't remember that she was that person at that time.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I found out she was an editor, and I go, you guys with your labels, it's got to be dairy or it's got to be produce, or you don't know what to do with it. And she said, well, some books fall between stools. And I said,
It's
I
like
got a
triggering.
reject, I got a rejection from you. Use that phrase. And she goes, oh, she got all flustered. She said, oh, yeah, it's a term of art. I'm like, yeah, sure it is. And so I went in my emails and bingo, it was
That's
great.
so funny. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Um, but so then you got the 3-book contract, and was that for a series?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Starvation Lake and 2 other books. I actually wrote 4, but one of them was so bad I had to rewrite it.
Was it
Totally
so?
buried.
I mean, so then were you beholden to kind of give them a synopsis for books 2 and 3? And did you have to, because we were just saying how like you thought of this twist kind of organically with the first book and you had to
Right.
rewrite. That's how I write. Like I don't know these great twists until I'm in
Yes.
it. So
That's right.
how do you tell the publisher what the book is going to be about?
On that, I don't, the short answer is I don't really remember. But, and part of the problem was my editor and the publisher at Touchstone both left. And they were big supporters of me. And then new people came in. And by then I was starting. So I turned in the book and it didn't work. And then I said, all right, I'm going to give you a synopsis. So I did write a synopsis for what would become The Hanging Tree. And I probably did the same for the 3rd book, Skeleton Box.
Hmm.
And in the case of the book, I just published a book called Bitterfrost, which Severn House
Right.
bought a year ago. And last summer, while I was editing that, they said, do you have another idea? So I sent them a 300-word pitch, and they offered me a contract on that. So
For book 2 is
finished.
Severn House.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm finishing that now. And
My my
I have, go ahead.
my second book was with Severn House. I was with them and I was excited to be with them. And then I gave them my 3rd book. They're like, we love this. I'm like, great. They're like, but you didn't sell enough copies of the other book, so we're going to pass on you. And I remember
Yeah.
that moment feeling like, oh, this is a business. I guess I hadn't quite realized that.
Yeah. That
And
happened to me with Thomas and Mercer. Same thing.
yeah,
And
they were great.
They were great people. They did everything they could, and their numbers, their threshold is much higher for
Right.
continuing with an author than many other publishers, but especially Severn House.
Well, and it's just like, you know, Amazon's a different beast, obviously, and they have a different way to get the book in front of people. So, like, you see,
Right.
somebody would like, it's funny when I'm looking up an author and I see they have books that have like 200, 300, 400 reviews, and all of a sudden one has like 5,000 reviews. I'm like, I bet you that's a Thomas and Mercer book, or,
Yeah, yeah,
whatever, because
yeah,
they can get those eyes on it. But it's, you think somebody with 5,000 reviews, they're golden, but that's not the case at all. They've given that book, or they've made that book available either discounted or free, Kindle Unlimited, to hundreds of thousands of people, which is great because
yeah,
you get this massive
yeah.
exposure.
It was very
Uh,
cool.
but then to your point, the expectations are extremely high,
Yeah,
and
and
you
you go
kind
in
of can't
thinking,
control that.
I'm going to be the next Bob Dugoni and sell millions of books, right? A really
Right,
great guy. I know Bob. And like as with all books publishers, it's probably not going to happen. So you
right.
better enjoy what you're doing and appreciate the fact that you've got somebody that will put it between two covers and go to bookstores and sell it. Easy for
Yeah,
me to say because it's not my livelihood. I'm retired and I'm fine. So it's easier for me to say that somebody who depends on selling books to pay their bills.
yeah, and it's in this day and age, it's now beyond you just writing the book. It's now you, what else are you doing that is
Right.
elevating your brand, that's making you, a conversation somehow that's beyond just, and it's hard because going back to what we were saying before, most writers are introverts. And, you know, through this podcast, I've kind of made this niche of interviewing people. So now I'm getting asked to interview big names on big stages in front of a lot of people. And I'm
Cool.
like, this is great. This is like, because it helps me. Oh, I love it, first of all, but it helps
Yeah.
me. But everyone's got to carve out a little bit, if you're really trying to make this into a career, it's beyond just sitting at your laptop and pounding out a good story, I think.
Yeah. Newsflash, you are not an introvert.
It's funny. I think I was just at Thriller Fest over the weekend, and I can go all in. So speaking of Bob Dugoni, he and I work together with the debut authors, so we're dealing with them. We're going to all these cocktail parties, and I'm socializing, and then I hit this wall. I'm like, I think I got a bit of an introvert inside me. I'm like, I just need to go to my hotel room and just stare at the wall for a while because it gets a little bit overwhelming after a while.
Yeah.
It's fun, but it does drain the battery a little bit. So just kind of looking back, I mean, so I think you've got 6 books out now,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
including Bitterfrost, which is the beginning of a series. You've sold the second one already to Severn House. How has your approach and how has your style kind of changed over the years, over these 6 books?
Um, so the first 3 books were first person
Hmm.
narrative. The narrative was a first person named guy
Single
named,
point of view?
yeah, Gus
Uh,
Carpenter, which is both freeing and limiting. I mean,
mm. That's how I
it's a
write.
little
I
more,
love it.
it's natural to write in the first person, but that person can't know things.
Right,
He can't know what Sheriff Dingus Aho knows
right.
unless Dingus tells him or he accidentally finds it out. So it's limiting in that way. Then I did those 3 for Simon and Schuster, and then I did 2 for Thomas and Mercer. And I decided, all right, I'm going to try third person, multiple third person. There were, I think, 3 points of view in Bleak Harbor and maybe 4 in Purgatory Bay. And I am terribly proud of Bleak Harbor. I just think it was great work by me, and I learned a lot doing that book, and
Hmm.
changed so many things as I went. Um, and then there's a fallow period for a variety of reasons. I actually wrote probably 200,000 words, and they just went nowhere.
Yeah.
And then I wrote. I took a character from one of those failed efforts, put her in a different situation. Her name is Devon Payne, and I started writing Bitterfrost. My agent said it was unsellable for a
Why?
variety of reasons.
Like, what was the main reason?
Too violent, too vulgar, too gritty,
Hmm.
and Devon, who's one of the three main characters, and is female, she said, she's too rough for me. Reviewers disagree. But anyway, I had some really good beta readers, including Anna Quindlen, New York Times bestselling novelist, who loves mysteries and thrillers. She was reading it. Steve Hamilton was reading it. And Jonathan Eig, old friend, Pulitzer winner, he just won a Pulitzer for Martin Luther King. So he's a nonfiction guy, but he's a great storyteller. And they were telling me, just keep going. You finish this book. So I finished it, and then I had to go find somebody. And there's, this. Severin is one of a handful of publishers who will look at your manuscript without an agent giving it to them. And I sent it in, and a few weeks later they said, we'll take this. So
yeah, that's great.
Here I am. But I'm not really answering your question, because your question was about how I've changed. And I think I've had several people tell me, who've read all my stuff, say this is by far your best book. And I think it's because it moves faster, even though it's over 100,000 words.
We're talking about Bitterfrost?
Bitterfrost, yeah.
Yeah.
It moves faster. I deliberately tried to keep chapters short when I could, but because I could move quickly from Garth Klimek to Devin Payne to Jimmy Baker, back to Klimek, over to Devin, back. And I mean, it takes work, this, because you want to keep clear who the different voices are. And I also leaned heavily on something I read that Lee Child wrote for the New York Times. It was an essay that was essentially, how do you create suspense? Yeah. And it was terrific, because what Lee said was, you just keep raising questions. Don't answer those questions right away. Throw those balls in the air. Eventually, you either have to cut them, get rid of them, or bring them down.
Right.
And John Eig, who's a nonfiction guy, I remember at one point he was reading and he goes, you keep ending these chapters. You're not telling me what you raise this question. I want to know the answer. And so I sent him Lee's essay, and I'm like, the fact that you want to know that answer keeps you reading, right?
Totally. Right. As long as you're not being too coy with the reader. And I think that's actually where first person is great, because as the protagonist speaking from their voice, you don't have the answers. That's what's great about it, is like you're constantly uncovering things that just raise more questions. I think once you start to go to multiple POVs, there's a responsibility to inject information that answer some of those questions earlier on, but that can be great too. It just depends on how that story is. I just did a panel on what's the best POV. I'm kind of convinced that, like, everyone says this, whatever POV serves the story best. I don't necessarily agree with that, because I think it's also like, what are you good at? Where is and when I started writing first person present tense, it was my fifth book. And that's, I think, where I found my voice. I can look back and be like, oh, that's how I write now. And that's the most organic way for me to write. I think that's my voice. But everyone kind of has a different opinion on that.
I really enjoyed first person. And while you were talking, I was thinking, oh, I know why, because I loved The Catcher in the Rye so much.
Yes.
And Holden Caulfield's very distinctive voice. And I also thought of Bright Lights, Big City, which is second person, but it's really first person, but it's
right.
And I recently published my first two short stories since college. I just wrote them for fun. Yeah. And one of them is in first person, an unnamed character. He's a guy who dives into ponds on golf courses to retrieve errant balls. And it's about his tit for tat with the greenskeeper who wants to stop him from stealing those balls. So, but that was first person, and it was fun because he's a fun guy.
Right. I think you have to have, and I don't think every writer has this. I think most good writers do have this, but I think to write first person, you have to be a fairly empathetic person to be able to just control a narrative through the eyes of somebody who completely could be different than you are. You just have to be able to imagine what it would be like to be them. And that has to bring because what it does is it brings the
Right.
emotion very forward, I think.
Right.
And if you're not somebody who can tap into that empathy or into those wells of emotion, it falls. I think it falls flat, and you can identify it when you're just like, okay, I'm not getting a sense of this person, but I'm seeing through their eyes, and that's not probably that writer's best voice. I think.
And people, especially people close to you, will say, "Oh, Gus Carpenter, the first person narrator in the first three books, that's you."
Right.
And I say,
Right.
"Well, no, I'm 6'2", Gus is 5'8".
Right.
I'm married, he's not. He's a failed journalist, I'm not. I have kids, he doesn't. He's a goaltender. Sorry, I'm not a goaltender." So,
I feel like
but are there
people,
pieces of me and Gus? I think there's
of
pieces
course,
of me in all of my characters.
it's
Devin Payne is a
inescapable.
female.
Right,
Pardon?
right, and it's inescapable that happens. And it's funny you mentioned that, because after my second book, I people always want to point out, oh, this is you, like, who know you, and that annoys me, like, because I'm very much, I love to write about places I don't know. I love characters that from that point I shifted to primarily writing from a female point of view to get away from that. And then I just realized, like, oh, I love writing like this, because you're not being shackled by your own kind of experiences.
Yeah.
And it is a little bit more eye-opening. So was that easy or difficult for you to shift to a female POV?
Well, I had a practice run because I wrote a book that was rejected because I was told no publisher will buy a book by a white guy about a mixed race character. And
As a protagonist.
Yeah, no, the mixed race character was not a protagonist.
Okay.
But anyway, that's what it was. I had a little pity party for a week, and then I started. But I took Devin Payne. I had written Devin in a different way in that book, and I said, I like her name. I like her guts. She's tough. I'm going to go with it, and she's just fun to be with.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are. Well, I'm not sure, but I suspect there are probably women out there who just think, how can this guy write this woman? But so far, I haven't gotten an email or seen a review that faults my portrayal of Devin, who's frustratingly ambivalent.
Yeah, and I think that probably goes to your ability to not overthink it, because I think that's the pitfall, right? Where someone is like, oh, what would a woman do in this situation? And you think of tropes and cliches, and it's like the type of stories we write, they're fraught stories, right? So you're thinking of what would a human being do in this situation? And yes, there might be differences, but I think if you overthink it, that's where amateurish writing kind of sticks its ugly head out. And of course, we're surrounded by, I was just reading an article yesterday, 80% of the publishing industry is staffed by women. My agent's a woman, my editors, my partner is the first person who reads my mail. I have no lack of brilliant women in my life who will give me feedback. So that's all it really is, I think. And you being willing to learn and making sure that makes sense to you.
If you narrow how far afield you can go by saying, well, it's Devin Payne, she's a woman, but she's also a criminal defense attorney.
Right.
She has this particular case, double murder case. She comes from a wealthy family. She plays hockey. So now, and these are all things you just, this is what she is. So they all limit how far afield you can go with what would a female do in this situation.
Right.
What would a female criminal defense attorney who comes from a wealthy family and plays hockey do in this situation?
Right. And it's the same argument, I think, is like, well, how can you write from a gender that's not yours? And I'm not trying to make any light of this at all, but what you just described, you're not a criminal defense attorney, but you have to get into the mind of one. That's our job, is to get into the mind of people who we are not, and try to approach it. But approach it with empathy and respect, even if it's a killer. To say like my mother's always says, like, well, authors write what they know, and I'm like, that I can't that drives me nuts when people say that, because that would make us all, criminals, essentially.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
give us credit for our imagination. And as long as we are willing to take feedback, I think you can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So, well, Bryan, we're going to wrap up. Before we do, we're going to do our little storytelling part of the show.
Oh, yeah.
Which,
Okay.
so I've picked 3 books. These are actually my book mail books that I just got in the last week. You're going to choose one of these books. We're going to choose a random sentence from a random page. I'm going to read that sentence. And then that's the first sentence in maybe a 2-minute long short story. So I'll read that sentence. You give me the next sentence or so. I'll do a sentence or so, and we'll see how it goes. I've got Karen Slaughter's This Is Why We Lied, Greg Hurwitz's Nemesis, and Liv Constantine's Don't Open Your Eyes. So choose one of those.
Let's do Karen Slaughter.
This is coming out, I think. I don't know if this is out yet or not.
I think it is. I thought I saw it, but maybe
It could be. So give me a number between 1 and 450. It's a big book.
Let's see, 16.
Oh. All right, I'm going to quickly scan page 16 for a sentence that could work. Lots of dialogue happening on this page.
You can try another page. Go to 116.
Oh, 116.
I'm trying to stick. My wife was August 16th. I would go to 816, but it's not long enough. So, dialogue.
Well, I'm going to give you the sentence, and you just do whatever you want with it. The character's name is Sarah. It's a very basic sentence. Sarah felt tears well into her eyes.
Gee.
The world's your oyster with this.
Jeez. I'm trying to think of a line that incorporates flying werewolves, but let's move on from that. Sarah felt tears well in her eyes. She had no way of reaching the boy in the river.
Despite her panic, her brain somehow was able to do all the calculations, and the resulting answer was nothing good. She knew the river water would be no more than 60 degrees this time of year, and then the current was moving him at least 8 knots. She had seen this before. He had about a 3% chance.
I would say, let me edit that last line. He had about 60 seconds. That's about all you have before you drown. I know this because the book I'm working on, there's a drown.
Oh.
Then again, she can race up the bank of the river, try to get ahead of the boy, dive in herself, and see if the vehicle he's trapped in had see if she could get into the vehicle he was trapped in and pull him out. Why not try that?
It's funny in life and death situations how you don't even take that much time to consider it. Something about the human body, something about the adrenaline, something about how the brain just shuts down and forces you to act. And that's exactly what Sarah did. She raced up the river, and without a second thought, she jumped in. And the impact of the cold immediately seized up her chest.
But she kept going, thinking tears are useless. Tears are useless. Tears are fucking useless. I just have to get to the car and then to the window and then to that boy.
I think we call it there because I think once you said tears are fucking useless, I'm like, I feel satisfied. I like that line. I like that line. That could be the title of the short story. Tears are fucking useless.
Tears are fucking.
I love that.
Useless tears and flying werewolves.
Well, listen, Bryan, it was great to talk to you. Congratulations on your recent release with Bitterfrost, and it's exciting to see what's coming next to you. You got the second book coming, and I'm assuming many, many, many more after that.
Here it is. See, useless fucking tears, fucking mess.
That's what a real manuscript looks like.
Yeah, but I love doing this. This is a carryover from journalism because I would take stories, now granted, way shorter, and mark them up with a pencil or a pen, and then incorporate those changes electronically. And then I would be changing the changes. And then with a newspaper story or a magazine story, which are shorter, you can actually vary the width of the column in Word.
Mm-hmm.
So I would narrow it, and then it looked different. So then I'd find ways to cut a word here, a word there. And you know what a widow is, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Widows were a black. Whenever I saw a widow, I'm like, awesome. There's got to be a way to shorten that sentence so that widow disappears.
Right.
Sorry, but that's a definite carryover from journalism.
That's great. All the magic comes alive in the editing. Great talking to you, man. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I hope to connect with you in person.
Great job. Thank you, Carter.
See ya.
Take care.
Bye. That is it. That is my conversation with Bryan Gruley. I think we did okay on that one. I think we worked things out. I think we got through that story okay. Pretty tragic. I don't know if the kid survives or not. I like to think so. I like to think it all worked out okay, but you never know. You can read all about Bryan at his website, bryangruley.com. Keep in mind, Bryan is Bryan. His recent book, Bitterfrost, is out right now, and you can pop on over to my website at carterwilson.com and check out my events, my new book, Tell Me What You Did, my pod, other episodes of Making It Up, my blog, all that fun stuff, and then head on over to unboundwriter.com if you're a writer who is looking for any kind of coaching or online classes, that kind of a thing. All right, I'm going to go lay down. I'm not feeling 100%. You might hear it in my voice. I hope not. But that is it for this episode of Making It Up. Thank you all, as always, for watching and or listening. And until the next episode, take care.